October 10th, 2025, as we're seeing a lot of negotiations, agreements, things changing on the world, global playing fields and stages, and cosmic events revealing themselves. A few scriptures I just want to point out here is first one is 1 Corinthians 15:7. It says, after that he was seen of James, then of all the apostles, and last of all he was seen of me also, as one born out of due time. This scripture speaks to me at this time and other times in my lives because it reminds me of how Yahushua is in the translated ones and is in time itself. As he established time, he marked the foundations and the boundary lines of everything in this earth, and how he established his own children as seeds into the earth, to send them where they go and to grow them where he wants them to go and where they're rooted and planted, so that they can become a garden for him. Jeremiah 18:1-6 also talks about how God instructs the prophet Jeremiah to go to a potter's house where he sees the potter working the clay on a wheel. And the potter's field is how God shows you how broken pieces are repurposed and redeemed, and how God exalts the lowly and God esteems humility, faith, obedience, righteousness, love, and compassion above human valued qualities like outward appearances or justification, or gratifications of the flesh and self-serving intentions. So scripture also indicates how God esteems those who are humble and contrite in spirit and tremble at his word, and that brings you to the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of all wisdom. So we're called to have God esteem, godly like esteem, and we get that through godly repentance and remorse and becoming more like the Creator and drawing closer to him, which means placing God and his will above any of our own ambitions and self-worth, and especially any idols in our hearts. So Proverbs 14:19 also says, the evil bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. And we're going to be seeing this more and more in areas that are precarious in nature, because God loves to work in the details of things and behind the scenes to bring back to awe and love those who really understand how he works and what his spirit is doing, and how he will use whoever he pleases and give life to whoever he pleases. And also how he raises up the humble. Proverbs 8:29 says, when he gave the sea its boundary, he did that so the waters would not overstep his command. So everything would have a circuit and follow his voice back to source, back to creation, to the Creator. And when he marked out the foundations of the earth, when they did, the Elohim, they established order, familial order, like a family unit, with wisdom personified herself as being present with him during this whole process. Proverbs 10:7 also says, the memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. And we'll also be seeing more and more of this into the years to come. And he'll bring back to a remembrance and a revealing the wonders he's already done, and the wonders that he's doing in the present, and the wonders that he will do in the future. Hidden ones also will be revealed as more revelations flood the earth. God's orders supersede the orders of any governments, kingdoms, and man. So a different topic here and a few other things I'm going to briefly go over. One thing that caught my attention was the University of Texas at Dallas. Researchers there have developed a method for embedding unique genetic identifiers into engineered cell lines. Companies like Creative BioArray and Cytenia have launched services using epigenetic induction for a wider range of cell types for advanced immortalization techniques. Post-array HeLa HeLa fibers. So those came out in 1952. HeLa cells became the first human cell line that could grow and divide endlessly in the laboratory. That has a huge impact on the biotech industry and still does, even in its imprint. So this drive to develop proprietary cell lines under confidential conditions is a major factor in the immortalized cell line market, which is valued at $4.5 billion, which is going up now in 2025 and is projected to continue to go up. And recent advancements in the field of transgene integration technologies for CHO cell line development are also on the forefront, and there is many new frontiers happening in cell culture industry. So another word on genetics is that our genome can make up and vary in expression and suppression of genes on a wide array scale, especially if you were a CRISPR baby. Our DNA can express geographic regions, even root markers, and display our makeup, almost like a holographic network. Some kids that had half their DNA as like 1 to 5% of like every single country or every single Slavic region, and all those roots, Slovenian Viking regions, were used a lot in trials for those specific areas to see what that percentage of trace DNA could unlock, hold, and retain still in the secret projects. And this helps with research and genome makeups for the next gens. Deliverance comes in and plays a crucial role for cell line interjections, things that and markers that have been interjected into our original cell lines that we came in with. And what happens then is you clear ancestral miasms in those cell markers in your genealogies and clear out hindering feline or other species DNA into your morphology, or the things that were interjected. And this also can be calibrated with portal and handheld tech, medbed upgrades, scans, procedures, and surgeries, as well as compartmentalized scientific research databases of mRNA contrasts, RNA, and epigenetics for the continuation of the king lines for all the European countries and its tracking. Those are some of the reasons why they use that and interlay those subsystems basically into original templates. So like Germanic marker, that's a very prevalent one for the secret space program assets and is traced to almost all of the thrones in the world. And this can be confusing and has caused some identity crises with the kids that were put into these programs. So much was extracted and transmitted also from bone marrow, fetal stem cells, and DNA trials that correlated directly with those missions. So the body needs to synthesize all of these elements and experiences it's been put through into one cohesive, blended, well-balanced vessel for future smooth sailing. And that's what I call the synchronicity factor. Body, brain, gut dynamics, and tissue cell repair is vital to sustain the damage that was done to us. Then there's the soul element. The soul can be a container, the seat in the mind carrying the experiences, carrying all the lives we've lived and processing all of our lives out in tandem or out of order. It can do that too, like working backwards or forwards to get to the center or the core, the central command, and then you stabilize as in a healthy medium in hopefully 1 or 2 bodies. 1, 2, or 3 bodies at this time is progress for many of the people that were old world and time travel survivors in the original organic timeline and are holding that. So the soul is like a filter. So if you were in the secret space program, you lived a life of, say, 20 years in a foreign country, your soul expanded the expanse of that region and was imprinted heavily by the experiences that went on there and where you left your mark. If you received a whole new body after that in a regenesis or incarnation process or protocol, you don't necessarily shed the whole morphogenetic field you carried from that past life, but retain it in a soul capacity and material that's quantum. So it's like an operating program in the back of that vessel that needs to come forward and then be displayed out and be processed out. Because when you're dealing with a body in the physical, you can flush things out, you can erase things. But on the morphogenetic, the deeper matter and material, you can't completely do that in the soul morphogenetic field because some things aren't allowable in the consciousness, body, soul, spirit interplay system. There's set orders that God put forth, and how far he allows that to go and how far he doesn't. That was his determination even in the antediluvian, how far it went and when divine intervention stepped in and whatnot. There's still boundaries and parameters with what can be done with our bodies and morphogenetics. And all of this stuff goes back to Eden and the pre-Adamic state that we lived in, knew about, because there was a pre-existent realm before the earth was formed and before the pillars were even formed of the earth. So some of this is like people that have carried a lot in their soul container. It's like carrying an ancient computer that you need to upgrade and repackage so it can have a form and a function in a whole symbiosis in the whole of the modern unit that would come forth to make sense of it, to compute. Otherwise, it's like excess baggage and delay, and it doesn't really serve you or humanity, and then it becomes subconsciously unexpressed, like some foreign energy packets that can emotionally, eventually, and psychologically cause illnesses. Because if somebody carries around too much of this and too many like hidden applications, in a sense, if you're viewing your body as like a processing unit, then it's going to cause aberrations, miasms, schisms, delays, and you're not going to be able to function on the optimal level that God intended for you to. So yes, in these programs, a percentage of individuals have gained a new body, and it's not a new practice in the world where we came from. Yes, our bodies could stay on a ship in the sky, on a spaceship, and then you could use other vessels to complete missions in certain areas mapped out where it would be pre-calculated that there wouldn't be any crippling harm, long-lasting harm to the body's whole apparatus field, and there were ways to measure all of these things out and probabilities and outcome factors and quantum computers, as well as response mechanisms and monoatomic healing modes for retrieval and decompression states. And this also applied to stasis units and zones and vectors. So if you were soul traveling, your spirit sometimes stayed apart from it, from a body, and then Bluetooth connected back into you when you had the anchor point open in integration phases. So these were like interlocking doors. That was like a symphony that was biometrically laced into your DNA. And this also can be represented as a phase lock conjugation sequencing. So if you were ever reborn and not translated, you carried all those past imprints, and the soul makeup is the container of the quantum library of that aspect. And yes, everybody does carry a celestial aspect. And the minute that you come into an incarnation, your destiny is declared in the heavens. So the heavens know who you are and what you're carrying. The body genome makeup could change and shift into a new state of cognition, be quickened by the oversoul that you carry, that quotient of intelligence, especially emotional intelligence, and the ratio of the mind of Christ that you were already born with, that partition, and your awareness, what you were aware of already. And then the veil happens when you go through the birth process, and there is a placating of amnesia and not remembering. So it's almost like your perfect self that saw a little bit of your future could come in and just give you a boost, like a jump, an interlay into the tiny little body that you came into, to help you be able to have a little bit more cognition. This helped the project surrogate babies to survive because they weren't just a sole group of newbies that came here, but they had already had several 20 and backs here. They were traveling before they were even born, before they came to Earth. And they came from the secret space program. They were seeded with a past wisdom, a kingdom that's not of this world, and a desire and a hope that was pre-established and preordained to already do heaven's will. Many Christians understand now soul consciousness transfer technologies and other things that also go back to Babylon and to the garden, but it went farther than that into complete rebirths, especially if you lost your original body or it was killed. If your soul was allowed to continue in a vessel to complete your mission on earth, because the devil cheats, and sometimes the devil would destroy, or the kingdom of darkness, a body when it wasn't its time to go back to heaven. So God has a backup plan for that, and sometimes he would allow somebody to gain a new body to be able to complete their mission on earth. That way they wouldn't get sucked into Lucifer's Stargate, back into what they would perceive as a reincarnation process, but they would stay in the grace of Yahushua's Stargate until the end of their time that he ordained and the end of the age. And plus, many died in time travel projects, and their bodies were torn apart. Many died in the time travel projects and also resurfaced. Some went into the time travel projects and were with the malevolent intent of somebody disposing them, and some never returned. Some did die, but some also resurfaced and then repopulated and multiplied. Some people were cloned or had twins made out of them. There was an array of avenues that were taken. Lucifer's Stargate has reincarnation soul traps, but Yahushua's does not, and he allows your soul, when brought to his kingdom, to be on a different apparatus completely and on a different time sync and celestial time clock instead of the fragmented infinite recursion that the devil and his minions would terrify children with and lie to them with to get them out of God's time, out of their destiny, and out of their fates. And many kids would believe that these people had the ability to kill their souls. So this is where a lot of the fragmentation also comes from. And the artificial timelines that other kids went into, and then the bodies that they used, which were called time bodies, that dissolved within that collapsed timeline that quantumly dissolved the body and the timeline together. But they recoiled if they had a soul back to a different point. And their spirit recoiled back, and their consciousness recoiled back into the original point. So it's almost like a reset. So Yahushua allows your soul, when brought to his kingdom and out of the kingdom of darkness, to complete its mission that he sent you to do, whether that's integrating into one body or finding a singularity point and ending loops to get back to normal and to get back there. If your timeline has been chewed up, if your body has been chewed up, and if you're fragmented in a way that only God can take, like the potter's field and the potter's vessel parable, and pick up those broken pieces in his field and put them back together, and then start making the clay again, because he is the potter and he molds and shapes us like clay. He'll help you do that. So if your genetic makeup isn't exactly what you thought it was from your life experiences, don't be disappointed, because genes and proteins themselves can be turned on and off, and it's just a blueprint of your framework and a tethering almost into a simulation platform from the organic source that we came from, like a reflection of heavenly things here in a cloudy world that's reflecting everything from above. There's many things in the blueprint of our framework. God is still completing and working on our frameworks and into our frameworks and into our innermost parts and our inner spirits. So what we see now is just dim compared to what is anyways. And it doesn't mean your memories aren't real either. It just means maybe there's other things you need to work through. It just may be more complicated than what you're perceiving. And it's 100% possible to be just Irish and have a lifetime of memories as a Jew or something like that, if things like that surface. And you could be more than that, is what I'm saying. So go back into those areas in the realm of Jesus Christ and help him be able to navigate those things for you and show you what is and what isn't. And then you can see in your life display what can attack your inner makeup, and then build defenses with that new revealed information. So there are things that can harm our souls, things that can harm our spirits. There's food for the soul, there's food for the spirit, there's food for the mind, there's food for the body. And the supernatural and the natural always interengage together, just like flesh that we walk in as closely as that, and how we are intertwined and our modus operandi. Viruses are also known to use genetic machinery of the human cells they invade to make copies of themselves. As part of the processes, viruses leave behind remnants throughout the genetic material, the genomes of humans. The virus-like insertions, called transposable elements, are snippets of genetic material, even simpler than viruses, that also use host cell machinery to replicate. These inserted elements have been silenced by our cells' defense mechanisms over time, but a few nicknamed jumping genes can still move around the human genome like viruses. Just one, called long interspersed nuclear element 1, line 1, can still move by itself as an element type that behaves like the retrovirus HIV. The line 1 retrotransposon is first copied into a molecule of RNA, the genetic material that partners with DNA, and then the RNA line 1 copy is converted back into DNA in a new place in the genome by entering the cell nucleus. So these things map themselves out, just like parasites do, and just like what happens in the demonic when they read you, when they've studied your soul, when they've studied your whole life, when they know you, and then can make plans to work against you. It's the microcosm and the macrocosm manifesting in the stage of life. So it's copycatting. This line 1 is copycatting original form and forming another line 1 and calling itself the dominant, when it's not. It's backwards, it's inverted. So they cluster attached to the DNA via protein encoding until the nucleus reforms after cell division. Line 1 binds to cellular DNA during the brief periods when nuclei break open as cells continually divide in two, creating replacements to keep tissues viable as we age. The line 1 condensate acts as a delivery vehicle to bring its RNA into proximity of the right sequences. Line 1 is thought to evade mechanisms that exclude large particles from the nucleus during mitosis as a cellular defense against viruses. There are designs being implemented for the prevention of line 1 replications, though. So they wait for the opportune moment to divide and conquer and keep the tissues in a denigrative state. But the reversal of this is at the perfect divine right timing. You can reverse these types of behaviors and patterns that humans are susceptible to, and create the right sequences to override these intentions and these designs. So then I'm going to turn my attention to signals and signatures. Classic signals, especially those powered by lasers, flood the fiber. They can flood fiber with light. This generates a kind of noise called inelastic scattering. One type, known as spontaneous Raman scattering, floods the line with stray photons that can drown out the quantum signals by three connected nodes. Quantum and classical signals traveled side by side, but on separate wavelengths. in this experiment. And a joint Bell state measurement was noted, and this was performed on a single photon and one from an entangled pair. This enabled teleportation without damaging the quantum information. They sent quantum signals in the 1290 nanometer band away from the high noise C band used by classical traffic. Narrow band filters and coincidence detection helped keep the noise low. The result was a clean, reliable quantum state transfer, even over an internet-loaded fiber optic cable. By performing a destructive measurement on two photons, one was carrying a quantum state and one entangled with another photon. The quantum state was transferred onto the remaining photon, which can be very far away. Teleportation allowed the exchange of information over great distances without requiring the information itself to travel that distance. So that's an important factor here, without requiring the information itself to travel that distance. So it can be an echo, it could be a shadow, it could be a signal, but it doesn't necessarily have to require the information itself to travel that distance. So there's protective and curious protective layers of quantum information that physics hasn't unraveled yet, because quantum information itself has a way of protecting itself without being damaged. So then what they did was they deposited quantum dots on corrugated chips to improve photodetector capabilities. And that technique eliminated the need for post-processing and advanced the scalability and performance of quantum dot-based photodetectors. Crack-free quantum dot films was challenging at first with traditional deposition methods, but to address that problem, a scientific team used electrophoretic deposition, which drives charged particles through a solution with an electric field. And when immersed in this liquid environment, the quantum dots migrated toward an electrode with the opposite charge. And when they reached that electrode, they assembled into a film. So by turning the electric field on or off, you could start or stop the deposition process. Since only surfaces under an applied bias receive deposition, electrophoretic deposition naturally enables selective coating. And this allows for the quantum dots to be deposited only on predefined regions of a pattern chip. Electrophoretic deposition was the driving force that enabled the place where quantum dots would fall. So there's order and instruction, more so in electricity than in magnetism. Traditionally, quantum dots were synthesized with long organic ligands, molecules that bind to the dots and stabilize them in a solution. But after the quantum dots were deposited as a film, those long ligands acted as insulators, and they hindered charge transport and limited the device performance. Removing the long ligands with post-processing increased production time and the likelihood of defects. So then they used short ligands, which combined in a solution the ligand exchange with electrophoretic deposition, and then that paper showed that dense, conformal, and electronically functional quantum dot films can be deposited in a single step. This created a quantum dot film on patterned substrates, and then the next step was involving depositing different sizes of the dots on different regions. This enabled tailored sensors that could detect multiple wavelengths of light. Rochester has implemented quantum networks using photonic chips for quantum light generation and solid-state-based quantum memory nodes. And this happened for 11 miles, and that was based at room temperature. These fiber optic cables, aided by optical wavelengths, used different qubits and then formed a unified network. And last but not least, efforts were also underway to harvest energy from the moon for energy production. While Space Force was demonstrating new tracking and navigational capabilities for its influence on space, objectives were to keep tabs with satellites on spacecraft and other objects near the moon. And I'm not sure if anybody will be given new job titles with this new moon energy harvesting focus. MIR 145 is also hypothesized to be a tumor suppressor. Now, into the drone sphere. In the US, we have created the world's first high-pulse microwave robot to fry drone swarms in seconds. And this weighs about 10 tons. It's called TRX. It's a hybrid electric AI-enhanced tracked vehicle capable of traveling more than 300 miles on a single charge. It's the world's first high-pulse microwave armed robot. And the system represents a new model of defense innovation, a merger between traditional prime defense contractors and neo-primes, or emerging tech firms. The marriage of neo-primes and primes is how the U.S. defense industrial base can best ensure victory as the battlefield rapidly evolves. The core of the new platform is the Leonidas HPM system, which uses weaponized electromagnetic interference, WEMI, by combining General Dynamics land systems. And they've had decades of leadership in that development and deployment of ground combat vehicles with Epirus, Premier Non-Kinetic Counter UAS Effector. Leonidas AR achieves a level of next-gen technology that today's battlefields demand, says the Vice President for U.S. Strategy and Business Development at GDLS. So they're also saying that the sixth domain, the electromagnetic spectrum, will define future conflicts. And leaders of fintech arms still rank at US being number one, then the UK, Singapore, China, with India, Brazil, Germany, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, Lithuania, and UAE trailing behind. ARC is also something new. ARC will redefine global logistics with cross-range agility and pinpoint re-entry control. Thousands of ARC crafts will sit parked in low Earth orbit, ready to plunge through the atmosphere on command, gliding down through hypersonic re-entry before landing safely under parachutes. Inversion calls it a logistics network in space for rapid delivery. So it's like a space postal office. S nerpeniem ozidiem normalizacji odnoszeni z Rosji i Ameryką, возобновления plenarnych zasedání i partnerstwa. Пусть это будет исторически позитивно и продуктивно. Cheers, wasze zdrowie. До следующего раза.